Tradcast Express.
Tradcast Express. It's Friday, April 28th, 2017. Folks, you know how it is. No matter what happens in the world, you can bet your bottom dollar that Francis has something to say about it. Well, okay, there's one exception. When the 100th anniversary of the death of Pope St. Pius X came up on August 20th, 2014, Francis had absolutely nothing to say. His motor mouth was actually entirely silent on that occasion. But anyway, that's not our topic now. Rather, it's this. Earlier this week, Francis sent a video message to the 2017 TED conference, which was placed under the motto, "The Future of You." TED stands for Technology, Entertainment, and Design. I guess Francis' talk would have to fall into the entertainment category, although it wasn't exactly entertaining. It was just awful. For almost 18 minutes, which is the TED Talk limit that everyone has to abide by, Francis graced his hapless listeners with the usual blather about inclusion, encounter, solidarity, and all the rest, culminating in an idiotic call for a, quote, revolution of tenderness. And there we go again with the inane tripe that he sells to the world as the gospel, but which is really just a mixture of Freemasonic naturalism and Jewish existentialist philosophy in the style of Martin Buber. It's an utter shame that Francis gets away with it. For example, if you look at the March 2017 issue of Inside the Vatican magazine, it says on the cover, 4 years with Francis. He has preached the gospel to the world, both in his words and in his deeds. Yeah, well, the soup kitchen gospel perhaps, but Christ didn't become man and die on the cross just so that we would feed the hungry and caress the elderly. The incarnation wasn't necessary for that, but Francis is actually entirely distorting the meaning and purpose of the incarnation away from God the Son becoming a member of the race of Adam in order to redeem that race and offer a sin-atoning sacrifice to God, and instead turning it into a solidarity fest that makes it seem as though God became man just so he could have compassion on us on account of our miserable human condition. And that, by the way, is the Zollage heresy, if you remember. Back in 2009, the then Archbishop of Freiburg, Germany, Robert Zollage, said in an interview on Good Friday, no less, that God didn't die on the cross in order to render a sacrifice of atonement to appease God's just wrath, but rather in order to show solidarity with man and to identify himself with us and our sufferings by suffering and dying himself. That is pure heresy. So anyway, we've got a pretty big post up about Francis's idiotic revolution of tenderness, and in that post we're going through his TED speech and contrast his remarks with the true gospel, which is supernatural in essence, and actually focuses not on this world so much as on eternity. You know, that last judgment thing. It's kind of important. More important than carbon output or accommodating migrants. Look for our post entitled, A Revolution of Tenderness, Francis' video message to TED conference, posted on April 28th at novusordowatch.org/wire. Another article we published this week concerns the curious phenomenon of sedevacantophobia, if we want to call it that. It's this bizarre and totally unreasonable fear of sedevacantism that people have, going so far as to come up with the most ludicrous and un-Catholic ideas as long as they can continue to believe that Francis is the Pope and the Vatican II sect is the Catholic Church. One such idea was recently promoted by Steve Skojec, the editor of the popular semi-trad website 1 Peter 5. Skojec called for, I kid you not, a practical sedevacantism, where you're supposed to basically act like a sedevacantist, but of course without actually being one. I mean, heaven forbid. So you're supposed to say that Francis is the Pope, but act like he isn't. Which is basically what they all do anyway, but I don't think it's ever been so explicitly advocated. And This reminds me of something. It reminds me of people who say that Jesus Christ is their Lord and Master, but act like he isn't. Anyway, check out our post on this. It's a very interesting one that totally dismantles this silly idea of a practical sedevacantism and demonstrates how it is absolutely incompatible with Catholic teaching on the papacy. Because, the papacy is a little bit more than just a nice label you can give to someone and then go off and do your own thing. There's this pesky submission thing, Anyway, the post is entitled Anything But Sedevacantism, Analysis of a Curious Phenomenon, and it is likewise found on our blog. It's the entry dated April 25th. Oh yes, and lastly, in case you're not aware, the Francis show is currently underway in Egypt. If you missed it so far, well, you really didn't miss it, because it's just the same old stuff, just in a different location. Fraternity, dialogue, common declaration, ecumenism of blood, and so forth. Just the usual. We'll have a post up with coverage of that by Sunday night. Tradcast Express is a production of Novus Ordo Watch. Check us out at tradcast.org, and if you like what we're doing, please consider making a tax-deductible contribution at novusordowatch.org/donate.